Hello and welcome to Weather Watch, Millersville University's exclusive weather entertainment program. I'm your host, Katie Pritchard. Many interesting weather events have occurred across the globe since our last episode, so let us begin by highlighting them in your Weather in 60 Seconds.
Heavy rains causing flooding in Chile, record-breaking heat waves in Australia, and the potential collapse of the Oroville Dam in California are all part of this edition of your Weather in 60 Seconds. Traveling over to New South Wales, Australia, record-breaking heat dominated their February. Temperatures soared into the mid-100s, which is way above their average temperature of 75 to 80 degrees for February. These heat waves caused brush fires and the failing of a gas-fired power plant. In Chile, heavy rains during the usual dry summer months caused landslides and major flooding near the capital of Chile. Rivers have overflowed, causing the drinking water for millions of households to be contaminated. This is the second major flooding event to hit Chile in the past year. Ending in California, heavy rains caused Lake Oroville to nearly overflow. The nation's largest dam is still intact, but the primary spillway, which is used to leak water to prevent an overflow, was damaged due to erosion, causing the threat of flooding to thousands of people. And that's a wrap for this edition of Your Weather in 60 Seconds.
This winter has produced weather extremes ranging from unseasonably warm temperatures and lack of snowfall to a record snow event in northeast Pennsylvania, which capped off our season. Let's check in with meteorologist Eric Horst to hear his thoughts on this past winter in our winter recap.
Well, heading into this winter, the La Nina in the Pacific was the most prominent signal. La Nina is the cool phase in the Pacific, and it tends to result in a jet stream that's farther north across the United States. So some of the things I forecasted in the winter outlook with that northern storm track is that the heaviest snow would be from the Cascades in the northwestern U.S., across the upper Midwest into northern New England, and much of the nation being below the jet stream would have below average precipitation but above average temperatures. And overall, that worked out quite well. The storm track was on average mainly to our north, and the heaviest snow did indeed fall across the northern tier states, but it also snowed very heavily in the Sierra. There was record snowfall and was unexpected in my mind, as was the magnitude of the warmth in the east. I kind of felt that this winter was going to have a warm bias where, the warm days might outnumber the cold days 2-to-1. Well, in reality, this winter, here in Pennsylvania especially, the warm days outnumbered the cold days like 8-to-1. In fact, February was incredibly remarkable. I mean, February was absent of winter weather for the most part here, and actually that was the trend nationwide. It was a very, very warm January and February, especially east of the Rockies. So the La Nina was a factor early on, but faded later on, and it's the strong Pacific jet stream just kind of took a life of its own in terms of dictating the rain and snow in the west, in California and in the Cascades. And then, of course, as that mild air from the Pacific comes down off the Rockies, it produces a Chinook warm-up across the plains, and then that warm air just works eastward and ultimately led to the very warm conditions here that were just persistent for much of the winter. So looking at it month to month, December, that roller coaster ride kind of worked out as I expected, and temperatures were a wash. The ups and downs canceled each other out. December finished up near normal in terms of temperature, though we didn't have hardly anything in the way of snow. January, we started to get into that Pacific air, and it ended up being the 15th warmest January on record. So it wasn't record warm, but it was above average substantially. And then February was where the warmth really peaked. As I mentioned, the warmest February on record here in the Lancaster area. Interestingly, in the final days of winter, as we got into March, especially mid-March, the jet streams started to amplify, and we got a couple of shots of Arctic air to come into the United States and to come into the Northeast. And we had a 10-day spell below average temperatures to finish the winter season. And of course, we had a big snowstorm. It was a near blizzard in parts of New England where 2 to 3 feet of snow fell interior New England. And here in Lancaster, we had 9 inches, our biggest snowfall of the season. So when the winter's all said and done here in the Lancaster area, we finished up with a little over 18 inches of snow, which that is below normal. The long-term average is 26, but it really falls within one standard deviation, so it's not all that unusual, the 18 inches. It's not like it was a snowless or nearly snowless winter. That big storm kind of saved us here in March in terms of the snowfall statistics. Temperature-wise, after a near-average start, that warm January, February really tipped the scales and made for one of the warmest winters on record here, which by the way, are often La Nina winters. So that kind of worked out as it should. It was just a lot warmer than I forecasted, than I expected.
Winter has certainly been interesting for many parts of Pennsylvania. If record snowfall and unusually warm temperatures weren't enough for residents, history repeated itself in the form of another tornado a year later in southern Pennsylvania. We'll examine this severe storm with Harley Trader.
On February 26, 2017, an unusually strong cold front brought some severe storms to the Lancaster-York area. These storms featured a 20-degree drop in temperature over a period of a couple of hours. These storms originated out in the Midwest where, through a combination of an unusually high temperature for late winter, along with an unusually high dew point, helped to spawn these severe storms. These storms then later on traveled eastward and then affected central Pennsylvania. A tornado of EF1 strength touched down in York County between Hallam and Wrightsville with wind speed of 90 miles per hour. This tornado was on the ground for about 4 miles. Most of the damage involved damage to trees, roofs, and broken windows. Meanwhile, across the Susquehanna River in Lancaster County, Elizabethtown experienced strong straight-line wind damage, which was initially thought to have also been from a tornado. The Lancaster County storm had many similar characteristics to the York storm, minus any rotation within the cloud that would have defined tornadic development. Regardless, the wind speed for the Lancaster storm was also around 75 to 95 miles per hour, which was still strong enough to knock down several farm buildings and uproot many trees. The damage from these winds also managed to span a course of 9 miles, with an estimated cost of damage to be about $7 million. Severe storms of this nature and magnitude are quite uncommon for late winter in Pennsylvania. In fact, the total number of tornadoes for February still remains under 5 to this day. Regardless of which, it's still important to know that severe weather can happen at any time, and knowing the proper safety precautions and when to seek shelter can be invaluable, regardless of what season you're in. For Weather Watch, I'm student meteorologist Harley Trader.
Thank you, Harley. Well, that's all for this episode of Weather Watch. Be sure to like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter at the addresses shown below. You can also watch all our previous episodes at muweatherwatch.com. On behalf of the entire cast and crew, thank you for watching and tune in next time.